Welcome to Soccer in 60, presented by the Empire Strikers. Get ready for your weekly look at all the pro soccer teams in Greater Los Angeles. We've got all the news and analysis you need, from LAFC and the LA Galaxy to the Empire Strikers, Angel City FC, and Orange County Soccer Club. Now, buckle up and enjoy Soccer in 60.
Buckle up indeed, and welcome to the fastest paced soccer show in SoCal. This is Soccer in 60, brought to you by SAC Health System, covering all the week's news, highlights, and more from LAFC, the Galaxy, Angel City, Orange County Soccer Club, and of course, the major arena soccer league's own Empire Strikers. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, J.R. Liebert, your friendly neighborhood Scarf. Thank you so much for joining me on another absolutely jam-packed episode of Soccer in 60. Please subscribe to the podcast on all your podcast platforms and make sure you head on over to the YouTubes and subscribe to Soccer in 60. We have a fantastic interview this week with Isaac Lowenkron, the play-by-play voice for Angel City FC on iHeartRadio. He's going to help give some context to the 2025 season for Angel City. But right now, we've got a star-studded lineup joining us here on Soccer in 60. First, from the Laguna Galaxiana podcast, my good buddy Ananda Kirana. Ananda, welcome back.
Good to be back, guys. What's up?
It's good to have you, my friend. And of course, my co-host with the most, my man, Timmy K, Tim Kolatz. Welcome back, my friend, to Soccer in 60.
Yeah, great to be seeing you, Scarf. Great to be in with all my football peeps. And while you mentioned it in the pregame that Orange County's game ended with the pumpkin, I think it might have been more of a jack-o'-lantern, but more on that later.
Look, you're absolutely right. An international break, just about the only thing that can slow down Denis and Son. You mentioned it. Cinderella's carriage finally turns into a pumpkin for Orange County Soccer Club. And maybe some Marco Reus news that we'll talk to Ananda about. But before we talk LAFC and Galaxy, let's make sure that we say hi to our good friends over at Omnitrans in partnership with the Empire Strikers. Experience the thrill of game day with Omnitrans. Be in the heart of the action at Toyota Arena and let Omnitrans take care of the ride. Simply download the Transit app to catch your bus and enjoy a stress-free trip to cheer on the Strikers. Don't miss out on the excitement and make every moment count at Toyota Arena. Ride with Omnitrans to your next Empire Strikers game. And by the way, Strikers game's happening soon. Get your tickets. They're on sale now. But now, let's head on over to some Galaxy talk. Ananda, Tim, I checked my calendar, and Ananda, there's a match this week with the LA Galaxy. It's obviously not a playoff match. We're in the international break, but Liga MX Giants Club America coming to Dignity Health Sports Park. Ananda, can you get us hyped up, get us ready for this match against Club America?
Well, the fact that there's no points or no jeopardy in this match, I'm not sure I can, Scarf, but I will try as best as I can. Look, it's a really interesting one too for the Club America side because Scarf, I don't know if you realize this, but they are about to embark on their playoff ambitions here. I want to say 8 or 9 days after the match. So like, are they trying to use this as a warm-up match? I'm not sure. But then again, you can let me know because, you know, LAFC have like a 3-week break or something ridiculous. Right. So, you know, we can debate on whether a tune-up match is worthy or not. But look, at the end of the day, this is a friendly. This is something that clearly both teams want to do. I would say from a marketability standpoint, I think it's going to be interesting too to see Dignity Health Sports Park. Like, how many Club America jerseys are there going to be versus the Galaxy? I'm going to venture to guess 80-20.
Yeah, that was actually my next question for you. The cheapest ticket on StubHub that I looked right before we went to record, $72 on StubHub for this match. So you said it already, right? Is this going to be a Galaxy home match? Probably not. Look, we saw the same thing at SoFi Stadium when LAFC played against Club America. I don't know that there is a better followed club in Liga MX, especially in the Southern California area, than Club America. So this will be really interesting. I think too, Ananda, what might be really interesting to see is, does Marco Reus get a ton of time in this one? Does Gabriel Peck get a ton of time in this one? There's I don't know. What do you think? Do you play the young kids? Do you play your starting lineup? What happens in this match if you're Greg Vanney?
I'm going to venture to guess that Greg's going to lean a little bit more on the youth side. Like, I feel like with some of those veterans, he knows what he's got. And for them, I mean, look, it's a longer offseason. Rest and recovery are probably going to be the most important. I know Marco was dealing with a lot of injuries throughout the season, so maybe this is like his time to rest and recover. And I think those guys are proven quantities for Greg. What he wants to know is like, how do his young guys stack up to Liga MX competition? We saw a little bit of that in Leagues Cup. Harbor Miller, Mauricio Cuevas, those guys. So I have a feeling Greg is going to lean more towards that way, but I don't know. What do you think, Tim? Do you agree with that, or what do you have to say on that?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Ananda. I mean, to put Marco Royce out there or Peck out there, does it make sense? Unlikely. Do you give the fans what they kind of want to see for Club America? They don't want to see either of those guys because America wants to win. But I think the reality is when you're getting $70, $75 for a ducat, I think you got to put some of the old guys out there, some of your stars, just to appease a lot of both sides of the fans. And I think at the end of the day, though, you're going to have some of these guys like Harbor Miller and Cuevas and that type of stuff getting 70, 80 minutes.
Yeah, what we do know for sure, Scarf, is Ricky is not going to play. Greg was pretty clear about that, so I definitely have to put that in there as well. Tim talked about the stars, so he's not going to be on there for sure.
Yeah, he is back at training for what they say, so that's interesting. And look, it's a nice segue into Galaxy and their youth movement. It really showed in some respective call-ups to their youth national teams. We had Harbor Miller, Ruben Ramos Jr., and Dylan Vanney, who, oh, by the way, if you're going to make a graphic for all your players that were called into the U19s, how are you going to leave off the coach's kid on that graphic? I thought that was kind of funny. No Dylan Vanney on there, but Harbor Miller, Ruben Ramos Jr., and Dylan Vanney get called into the U19 camp. Vinny Garcia getting called into the U17s. Ruben actually started the first match against Herediano in the CONCACAF Champions Cup in a match early April against Salt Lake. Vanney's still looking to crack Dad's roster, but I think we all can agree a real bright spot this season for the Galaxy was the emergence of Harbor Miller as a viable piece, right? He had an assist in the CONCACAF Champions Cup against Herediano. He started at all three lines at some point this season for the Galaxy, outside back, midfield, and winger. 5 goals and 4 assists in MLS Next Pro has proven he's probably outgrown that level. What does it mean for a player like Harbor Miller, Ananda, that he's getting this type of exposure and prolonged exposure with the U19s for the U.S.?
Yeah, it's super positive, especially the national team experience. I think as a player, you want to put yourselves in different situations, different sort of circumstances to help you develop and grow as a player. And I think this is a long way to go to that, Scarf. I think it's going to help him tremendously. And for the Galaxy, interestingly enough, Scarf, it brings up an interesting roster conversation with the emergence of Harbor Miller. I've seen shouts out there from the Galaxy faithful of how expendable now is Miki Yamane. You've got 3 legit starting right backs now for the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And so that brings up an interesting question from a roster perspective, I think. But his emergence has been nothing but positive for the Galaxy.
And Ananda, we know how important it is to save a little bit of money where you can in trying to stack an MLS roster. So that would be huge if they can get Harbor Miller. Tim, real quick, it's always an honor being called in to represent your country. But for these kids, these U19s and U17s, it's a sweet gig, man. These U19s are headed to Wrexham for camp. Their first match is at, I kid you not, Hops and Barley Stadium in Wales. And then their next match is at the Racecourse, home to Wrexham AFC. And then for Vinny and the U17s, he gets a 9-day trip to Dubai. Tim, what were you doing as a teenager? Were you going to Wrexham and Dubai, or where were you headed?
You know what? I don't believe I was. I was not going to Wrexham. I was not getting to play on an international stage in front of, 10 to 15,000 screaming fans trying to make me screw up my penalty kick. No, I was not. I think I was creeping around North Huntington Beach at a junior college at 19.
Man, what a cool bit of travel that these boys get to do. All right, Ananda, I got to ask you in some actual first team news, a reputable Dortmund site, according to our producer, is reporting that Marco Royce is set to extend his Galaxy run, his current contract through 2026, but this one maybe extending it by 1 more year through 2027. What are your thoughts about Royce signing up to play for the Galaxy until his, or at least through his, 38-year-old season for I'll just say somebody on our team called him Paper Bones Royce. I won't say who.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, Scarf, because I try to take a look at different angles. One angle is, look, from a contract perspective, you've got most of your DPs contracted through 2027, so maybe you're trying to keep that nucleus together, have 2 title runs, and see what happens. From a production standpoint, if we get the Marco Royce that we did mid-season, that ended the year with 13 goal contributions, leading the team in non-penalty goal contributions, as well as the underlying stats, Scarf. He led the team in non-penalty expected goal involvement. That's a good Marco Royce to have. Of course, The question is always going to be durability in minutes. And that's the only thing that we have in the back of our minds. But interesting call. We'll see what happens with that one.
Yeah, if it does come to fruition, it'll be nice to see him in Southern California for a little bit longer. A reminder, we have a fantastic interview with Angel City's play-by-play on iHeartRadio voice, Isaac Lowenkron. That's coming up in just a little bit. But let's check in before we talk LAFC with our good friends over at National Core. National Core is one of the nation's largest non-profit affordable housing developers and a proud sponsor of your MASL team, the Empire Strikers. At National Core, they believe that soccer has the power to transform lives just like they do. They believe in building strong communities on and off the field. And to learn more about National Core and their mission, go to nationalcore.org. It was a birthday week for one Denis Bouanga as he turned 31 just yesterday on the 11th. 7 LAFC players, including Denis, as well as Matt Evans of LAFC 2 and 3 LAFC Academy or youth players all got called in to their respective national teams. I want to give real quick, I got to give props to Jude Terry. Jude Terry has been talked about very little on this show, very little in LAFC circles, but he was recently named to the Guardians Next Generation 2025, which is a list of the 60 best young players in the world born in 2008. And we're talking everybody from kids who are playing for Bayern and Barca and all these other huge clubs. But it's nice to see a little MLS love, little LAFC love. So give some props to Jude Terry. Look, this international break couldn't come at a worse time for LAFC as Denis and Sonny were absolutely rolling. But the international break does allow them to get some run with their respective national teams. Son Heung-min, Matthew Chonier, and David Martinez all called in to national teams that are playing friendlies. And Tim, this is not a misprint. I had to go back over this and look at it a couple of times. Timothy Tillman called in to the U.S. men's national team camp. I love LAFC as much as the next person, but this was a surprise, Timmy K.
Yeah, this one's a little bit of a shocker. There were a couple of injuries to the midfielder for U.S. men's national team over the weekend.
Yeah.
But for a guy that maybe, coach just wants to get him his second cap, maybe, but
Sure.
This one's pretty interesting. So is it, hey, we just need a warm body, he's not going to play anyways? Or, hey, is this a little bit of, hey, you've had a really good season over at LAFC, not Marky Delgado good, but pretty good, and so we're going to reward one of our boys to get you to come in, right? Could that be it? I don't know. What do you think, Ananda?
Well, you just hit the nail on the head on the point about Mark Delgado. I feel like Mark Delgado, like every time, Scarf, roll the tape, because every time I come on here, don't I sing the praises of Mark Delgado? Like I'm
Yes,
literally
you do.
backing up my talk here.
Yeah.
And he's to me been the standout midfielder, and that's a great point that you bring up, Tim. I mean, just end the conversation, drop the mic there.
No, you're absolutely right. You guys, look, all due respect to Timmy Tillman. Obviously, his brother Malik has been a relative U.S. men's national team mainstay for the last couple cycles now. And you're just hoping maybe Ponch didn't get it mixed up. Maybe he thought he was calling him Malik. That was the big joke on the internet. But look, all due respect, look, to be able to put the U.S. men's national team shirt on, congrats to Timmy Tillman for sure on that one. But look, those guys are all playing in friendlies. Sonny for South Korea, Matthew Chonier for Canada, David Martinez for Venezuela, and Timmy for the U.S. men's national team. The matches to watch involve Denis Bouanga and Gabon, Andy Morin and Ireland, Nathan Ordaz and El Salvador, and Matt Evans and Guatemala. All 4 countries sort of, are still in the running for the 2026 World Cup. With all due respect to Andy Moran and the Republic of Ireland, it's pretty certain that Cristiano Ronaldo and Portugal are going to get that spot. It would take a couple of miracles and then a Hail Mary for them to get in that group. Guatemala and El Salvador are interesting. They're both in the same group of 4, both trailing Suriname, of all countries, who are on a fantastic run, and Panama. But we're talking about trailing them by just a couple of points. So results either way for either Guatemala, who has Matt Evans, who has played on LAFC 2, and Nathan Ordaz in El Salvador. And you can see either of those boys in the World Cup. But all eyes are on Gabon, a nation of 2.5 million people, the 43rd most populous nation in Africa. And Denis Bouanga, it's simple. If they beat Nigeria tomorrow, the most populous nation in Africa, 234 million people. And then they have to win the other match, if whoever wins the semi between Cameroon and Congo. If they win those two, then they get to play in another tournament to potentially qualify for this 2026 FIFA World Cup. It's the FIFA World Cup playoff tournament in March, right before. But it's simple. You lose and you go home. Timmy, what would it mean for Denis Bouanga, who has scored 8 goals through this qualification? What would it mean for Denis to be able to will Gabon through this qualifying process?
Yeah, and I don't use this term lightly. It would mean the world, because then the rest of the world would really get to see what Denis Bouanga can do. And he has put the team on his back. He's obviously their best player. I think it would be, similar to Iceland making the Worlds a couple of years ago, the European Championships a couple of years ago. You've got a little tiny country taking on the entire world. And I think for Denis and Gabon to come out and pull off a couple of upsets and then keep that mythical run going next March, I think it would be incredible for the soccer world there, Scarf.
Yeah, and they've risen about 100 spots in the ranks through this World Cup qualifying process. Gabon, it's been pretty incredible. Ananda, let me ask you, that battle between Guatemala, El Salvador, Suriname, Panama, that's an interesting one. We've seen a lot of LAFC players, especially, get some run for El Salvador. Your thoughts on that group, how it might shake out? I mean, it seems like everybody's trying not to win that group if you look at the bunch of these results.
Yeah, I mean, it's the beauty of qualifying, right? Especially in that region. And I think that's just kind of like the draw, the fan appeal around it. But you said it, Scarf, like no one looks like they're grabbing the bull by the horns. So it looks like it's still all for there to play. I know that we talked about Gabon being the interesting one here, but even just from no one wants to grab it. So it should be an interesting watch, like either way. Right. And of course, you've got some MLS players on both sides there, Eric Zabaleta not being one of them. Or who knows? I'm not sure if he's I got to check the roster actually, if he's going to be called up. Right. But yeah, so again, it should be interesting from that regard. But like you said, I think the showstopper there is the Gabon one. That's super interesting. Nigeria is a very strong team, so should be a fun watch, man.
Yeah, and these teams these gentlemen all play November 13th at some point tomorrow. We're recording this on a Wednesday, so you'll hear this tomorrow. It's today. If you're listening to this, you probably missed some of the games. So we just want to thank Ananda. I know you've got a lot of stuff going on. We appreciate you coming on, my friend. We are just about ready to kick it on over to our fantastic interview with Isaac Lowenkron, Angel City's play-by-play voice on iHeartRadio. But again, follow Ananda over on the Lacuna Galaxiana podcast. It's absolutely great to have Ananda there for sure. Look, the nice part about Soccer in 60 is we get Timmy K to check in on the highest level of indoor soccer played in the entire world. And in my humble opinion, and I know it's yours too, the absolute best arena in the entire MASL Toyota Arena. And of course, that houses the Empire Strikers. And what we have been doing, Tim, is looking back on their 2024-25 season. If you haven't followed the recap, go over to YouTube after you're done listening to us, and listen to the recaps that we've done for several of their other matches. It was a fantastic season. We will continue to recap it. And the nice part, Tim, is we get to travel to one of my favorite cities in the Union. That would be St. Louis. First, we get to go to Toyota Arena. We get to talk about an incredible Justin Stinson match as they stun the St. Louis Ambush 8-6. I don't know why it's stunning. They played pretty well over the entire match. I think they did what they needed to do. The win at home, Tim, Justin Stinson, all he did was have a hat trick and 2 assists. Abdul Mansouri with a fantastic game with 3 points. And this would lead to a little bit of momentum at the, let's say, one of the midpoints here, near the middle of the Empire Strikers season.
Yeah, when you get into early to mid-January like this match was on the 13th of January, you're going to get some of these, they call them the dog days of summer in baseball, but this is getting to the midpoint of the MASL season. And when you can have St. Louis come in, who's one of the quality teams in the league, come in and not so much stun them, but just kind of put it to them, like you said, Stinson gets a hat trick, pulls the rabbit out of the hat, and you win this game 8-6. It really kickstarts that middle of the season and pushes them into that playoff run, Scarf.
Well, and what it does too at Toyota Arena, it energizes that crowd, right? They were getting 3, 4, 5, 6,000 people at some of these matches, and it really rocked that place out there at Toyota Arena. And it's got to be so cool for Justin Stinson, right? Now, granted, he's playing at home in this one, but he is a St. Louis kid, so he just wants to show up against the St. Louis boys from the Ambush, right? And what I love about the indoor game, Tim, with this one, and it was an 8-6 win at home for Empire Strikers, is that it was 2-1 at the half. 11 of the 14 goals scored in the second half. You got to love it. And again, we want to mention Abdul Mansouri with 3 points because just 5 days later, Tim, they head to St. Louis to take on the Ambush. And again, we see more brilliance from Abdul Mansouri. But it's nice when you get to go into someone else's home, Tim, and pick up a road win, 7-5 over St. Louis.
Yeah, and we've talked about winning on the road is tough in any of these leagues, but when you get it, especially in St. Louis, they've got the arena that they play in, the people are really truly on top of the fans are on top of the players, and it's a raucous crowd. And for the Strikers to go in and have Marco have the game that he did, 3 points for Marco, 3 for Mansouri, like you mentioned. When you can count on multiple people to put up multiple points in a game, it makes your life so much easier, especially on the road, Scarf.
Well, and look, Abdul Mansouri didn't want St. Louis to leave. He had 3 points in each of these 2 contests that we're talking about, a 2-match win streak. And of course, this one now leveling the Strikers record on the season at 5-5. So important for them to get back to the 500 mark. They were obviously 3-5. Little 2-match win streak. Something else that would be a hallmark to the Empire Strikers season would be points from your goalkeeper. I know that's an odd thing to think about in MASL, but Coach Onu Obasi found a way to get all 3 of his keepers involved at many points throughout the season. Not much from Clayson DeLima over the course of the year, but in this one, 2 big assists from the keeper. What did it mean over the course of the year? And we'll certainly talk about it several other times as we complete this recap in the next couple of weeks. What did it mean to be able to get offensive contributions from your keeper?
I think it proves Coach Obasi's point as to play the way that he is playing. He's had this before in the TST tournament that we mentioned, and it took the boys several games to really understand how to play with that attacking keeper. And this proves the point that when you can get a guy that, a seasoned veteran like Clayson DeLima, to have him understand how to play in this type of format, in this type of system, and then he reaps the rewards from it with getting a couple of points as you're playing the system, I think it really bode well for the entire team to see these keepers consistently getting an assist here, a top shelf where Uncle Franz keeps the good stuff on a goal, things like that. I think it makes a big difference to the team and just builds that confidence, Scarf.
Absolutely. Only giving up a handful of goals in each of those 2 matches, no doubt, in large part to Beto Palmer. Robert Palmer named the MASL Defensive Player of the Week because of the way he played in these 2 matches. Of course, the Jamaica native is a mainstay on not just Defenders of the Week awards, but we're talking Defender of the Year awards multiple times for Beto. Goals in both games, by the way, from your defender. About a half dozen blocks over the course of the two matches. Just a couple of minutes left in our Empire Strikers talk. But Tim, what does it mean to have a player like Beto Palmer on the back line who's just an absolute rock star?
Well, when you have a beast like that on the back line, it just makes the opposing forwards scared, frightened, deathly ill to be kind of going up to a guy of that size and skill level. Yeah. And you guys can see this if you go to theempirestrikers.com, strikers with a Y, and get your tickets. You can see Roberto Palmer in person, and you can understand what me and Scarf are talking about. But to have him be that stalwart on the back line for the Strikers, again, it bodes well for the team, not only later in this season, which is last season, but also for this upcoming season.
Yeah, absolutely right. And just when they got everything back to 500, they get back home to Toyota Arena and unfortunately knock it on the door where the San Diego Sockers, a continual thorn in the side of the Empire Strikers last year. And it's even tougher as they fall 7-5 to San Diego in a match in late January. It's even tougher when you get 15 saves from a backup keeper to defeat the Empire Strikers. Xavier Snare Williams, who was there for the injured starting keeper. When you're up against a keeper like that, Tim, with just about a minute left, when you're up against a keeper like that who's just on a heater, saving 75% of the shots, 15 saves, it's got to be frustrating.
It is frustrating. The boys did everything they could to put as many shots on frame as they could, and that's what you have to do. When you get a guy that's on that much of a heater, you're going to get a toe poke that's going to slip through his arms, through his legs, and go 5-hole on him and get a goal, and then he's going to turn into a sieve, right? Yeah. If he's from a brick wall to a sieve over the course of one or two shots. But in this particular case, 15 of them just could not get past him.
Yeah, absolutely. And make sure you guys continue to follow our Empire Strikers rundown next couple weeks. But right now, we have a fantastic interview with Isaac Lowenkron, play-by-play voice for Angel City FC on iHeartRadio, as Isaac helps to give some context to the 2025 season for ACFC. Here is Isaac with our producer, Gunnar Burnt.
All right. I recently had the privilege of calling exactly one Angel City game with today's guest. It was truly a humbling experience to see this legend of Greater LA sports broadcasting work his magic in person. He's a Fox Sports Radio anchor, a host with the LA Chargers radio network, and he's called the LA Clippers, UCLA football and basketball, USC and Cal State Bakersfield basketball, as well as the NFL and college football for Sports USA Radio. He is the current play-by-play voice of ACFC on iHeartRadio, and I'm so happy he's joining me today. Mr. Isaac Lowenkron, welcome to Soccer in 60.
Thank you so much for having me, Gunnar. Great to talk to you and great to see you again. And yeah, we had a fun time working together earlier in the season and a crazy game against Chicago, some bizarre goals, and it was the NWSL at its best.
I remember it well, and you had one of the best calls that I've ever heard, where you said the one goal where two players came together. You said the ball kind of shot out as like a bar of soap, and I'll never forget that. That was the perfect way to describe it. But I digress. Let's talk some Angel City. Let's start with the big question, the biggest question of them all. After arriving from Bayern Munich in early June, Angel City head coach Alex Strauss assembled a record of 3-9-4 by my count. I'd love to get your assessment of his tenure so far. Do you think missing the playoffs was always something the club factored in as a possibility, given the difficulty of joining halfway through the season like that? How disappointed do you think ACFC fans should be with 2025?
Well, I think that you kind of said it right there. It's really challenging to add in a new head coach in the middle of the season. That being said, and I think, Angel City going in knew that this was going to be a long-term thing in terms of implementing his system and also implementing his players, his kind of players that he wanted to fit that system in concert with sporting director Mark Parsons. That being said, the NWSL, as you know, has so much parity, and any team on any given day or night can beat any other team. Any team can make the playoffs in any given season, it seems like. And also, any team can literally go from way out of the playoffs to not only being in the playoffs, but contending for a championship from a year-to-year basis. We've seen that with Gotham. We've seen that from Orlando. We've also seen it completely on the flip side. Never in my wildest dreams could I have believed that Kansas City, after literally the greatest regular season in NWSL history, would have lost in the first round of the playoffs at home. So I think it was a mixture. I thought that, if there was a chance for them to make it into the playoffs in 2025, all the better. But at the same time, they were looking big picture and long term. And I think Alex Strauss was looking that way as well. And what's interesting, he's alluded to it a couple of times. Alex Strauss could have joined the team after the international break. He could have even joined the team next year, but instead he dove right in with really no break after finishing his final season with the Bundesliga. And now that the season's over and Angel City is looking towards 2026, even though the record didn't reflect that, I'm so glad that he did come when he did, because he just got a head start on implementing his system and starting the process of bringing in players, because you could see the sort of system that he wanted to bring in, really from that first game. In fact, I think that the game you did with me was his first game on the sideline against Chicago. And even then you can kind of see what kind of things he wanted to implement and what his philosophy was all about.
Now you allude, first of all, I'm very impressed that you remember that was Alex Strauss's first game. You obviously have a great memory. But you alluded to some of the changes that he was trying to make. Angel City sent several prominent players to other teams over the course of the season within the league and abroad, several of whom had been major contributors on the field. A couple who stand out are obviously veterans like Alana Kennedy, Katie Zellum, also M.A. Vignola going to Portland, and of course the team's rising superstar, Alyssa Thompson. In looking back, did any of those leave you scratching your head at the time when they happened?
The sort of in-season player personnel movement is something that has been a challenge for me in general to get used to, both coming out and bringing in, because, in most North American professional sports, Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL, there's a trade deadline in like the middle or 2/3 of the way through the season, but that's all, intra-league, if you will. But because of the fact that, the NWSL is kind of on a different competition calendar, it's been an adjustment for me to see really prominent player movement throughout the course of the season, from country to country and league to league, but especially so late in the season. I mean, teams are making really significant moves, and it's just with 3 or 4 matches left in the regular season. And I think most notably, you alluded to one of them, M.A. Vignola being traded to the Portland Thorns, and, Angel City getting back Hina Sugita. And, everybody at Angel City loved M.A. Vignola. She'd been an original Angel since day one. But to be able to acquire Hina Sugita, she just fit in immediately with Angel City, literally from her first game. And I think Angel City fans are so thrilled to have her on board for the long term. You alluded to a couple of others, and all these big moves are kind of on a player by player basis, and the circumstances are different, and you don't know exactly, all the time the ins and outs of each decision. Was it a player wanted to go to a certain league? Was a player homesick? was there something else going on that we didn't know about? So all these are kind of on a case by case basis. You know, the Alyssa Thompson thing was just an earth shaking thing for everybody involved. Certainly, and you know, Angel City fans, you know, from day one had you know, embraced Alyssa Thompson deeply, and rightly so, as a homegrown product who, you know, literally scores a goal 10 minutes into her first match in the league. And then, you know, it's kind of a different story with Alana Kennedy over the international break and Katie Zellem. Alana Kennedy, for example, was someone who I thought fit in really, really well with Angel City, both as a defender and a midfielder, and had that sort of versatility to be really solid and tough for the team in two different positions. So, yeah, the in-season player movement, it's really kind of different in the NWSL than it is for most North American pro sports. And I guess in the grand scheme of things, it just makes everything all the more interesting to talk about.
Yeah, it's definitely not boring. But let's stay on the Alyssa Thompson move specifically for a second. ACFC only managed to score 9 goals in 9 games without her. But at the same time, they only scored 5 goals in Alex Strauss's first 7 games, and that was before Alyssa left. To what do you attribute Angel City's attacking struggles in the second half of 2025? And how impactful do you feel the loss of Alyssa Thompson has been?
Well, obviously, Alyssa Thompson is just a world-class elite forward. And, you know, any team that loses her, you're going to miss her unbelievable shot-making ability, her speed, just the impact that she makes on a game. At the same time, when you look at Angel City's overall offense and not so much the overall offense, but simply translating everything to wins, I think if I could summarize Angel City's 2025 season and perhaps even its 2024 season, Gunnar, into one sentence, and I think it's something that they're trying to transform and change so it's not this way in the future. I think the whole was not greater than the sum of the parts, if I can put it that way. Because when you look at Angel City's roster pre-Alyssa Thompson's departure and even after Alyssa Thompson's departure, you know, they have some fantastic, talented players at every level of the team, and you know, even coming in consistently off the bench. However, like I said, the whole was not greater than the sum of those parts, and that's what I think is the next step from what they've had the last couple of years to transforming that into a perennial playoff contender. Because I go back to saying, in the NWSL with the parity, any team can go from missing the playoffs to championship contender in a year. I suppose they could also go the other way and go from championship contender to non-playoff team. But I think aside from that, there's a couple of other things to consider. You know, you and I talked about the tremendous change that went on in season from a coaching standpoint and from a personnel standpoint. Angel City wound up using 29 different field players during the course of the 2025 regular season, which, you know, it's kind of hard to put into perspective, but that's an enormous amount. Yep. The year they made the playoffs in 2023, they only used 22 total field players during the course of the regular season. So that's a huge difference. So I think what Angel City fans are hoping and Angel City is expecting for 2026 and beyond is kind of an improvement that we saw this year from the likes of Seattle and San Diego, because Seattle had sort of a similar lack of continuity in 2024 and missed the playoffs. Laura Harvey told us it was, you know, her most challenging and frustrating season of coaching. And what do you know? They're in the playoffs in 2025. And the same is true for San Diego, which, you know, I'm not sure they had such a comparable roster turnover in terms of, you know, strict numbers like Seattle did and like Angel City did. But mid-season last year, Alex Morgan retires. There's a coaching change. There's an interim head coach. They trade Abby Dahlkemper, a longtime stalwart of their defense, to Bay FC. And then they lose Naomi Girma during the offseason also to Chelsea. So their personnel is completely changed, but the identity of their franchise from an on-field standpoint and from a public marketing standpoint, losing Alex Morgan and Naomi Girma, that's a really difficult thing to overcome. However, to their credit, they did, and they're back in the playoffs in 2025. So that's the kind of transformation I think that Angel City is hoping for. And, Seattle and San Diego have showed that it's clearly possible.
Mm-hmm. You're already looking ahead, so let's shift gears and look at the players that are hopefully the future for ACFC. Some of the players that they brought in over the course of the season. There have been quite a few, as we've touched on. Right, I'll just rattle off a few: Hannah Siebert, Svendis Jonsdottir, Evelyn Shores, Sarah Dorson, Hannah Sagita, as you mentioned. Of those new arrivals, you already pointed out at least one. Who has shown the most promise to you? And is there anyone who you feel has maybe struggled a bit to adapt to the new team and the new surroundings and the new system?
Well, of those you mentioned, I think the first one I'll talk about is Svendis Jonsdottir. It's been really fun to watch her and what she's brought to Angel City. And I think we alluded to it earlier. It's really tough to join a new team in midstream during the course of a season, whether it be an intra-league acquisition or especially when you're coming in from another league and another country. And Svendis was a really exciting, stylish player from the very beginning. And then, I referred to it. I've given her throw-ins the nickname Jan's Distance Throw-ins. She and Sam Staub are the only two players in the league who have the ability to turn a random routine throw-in into an offensive weapon. I mean, it's almost like having a corner kick, because she and Sam Staub are able to throw it in almost all the way to the goal box. And I think Angel City towards the end of the regular season did a little better job of being able to harness that ability and translate it into scoring chances. In fact, I've talked about this on the air. I'm surprised that more teams in the NWSL or soccer in general don't use throw-ins as a weapon like Svendis Jonsdottir and Sam Staub are able to do. Another player who I thought had a sneaky, strong close to the season was Myara News. She really, I felt, blossomed down the stretch. We saw it in, her production. She wound up scoring 2 goals in just 13 matches, including the match winner in a game against Bay FC. So from a goal scoring standpoint, but just an effectiveness standpoint in the midfield, I just love some of the aggressiveness that she displayed. I think her confidence continued to grow throughout the course of the regular season. So, I think she's a sneaky good player to watch for the future. And the other thing I'll point out is she's currently only 21 years old. And that's something that I haven't really brought up yet. But it's really pertinent to this Angel City team. I think, you kind of lose sight of the fact that most of their players are just outrageously and ridiculously young compared to the rest of the league. In fact, this year, 23 of their 31 goals were scored by players who were 22 years old or younger, which is an astounding stat. I don't think any other team in the league can say something like that. And I know it's somebody who's been with Angel City now for 3 years, but a young player who I think just the sky is the limit for is Kennedy Fuller. 4 goals and 3 assists in 2025. And, she just completed her second year in the league, but she's only, 18 years old. So, that's another thing to keep in mind is the nucleus for Angel City is still very, very, very young.
You know what? On that note, that's it's actually a perfect transition to my next question. We mentioned earlier that several veterans have left the team during the season. Now several more are leaving in Madison Hammond, Miyabi, Megan Reed, Kristen Press, Allie Riley, Casey Fair coming back from her loan, but she's 18, right? There's another 18-year-old. And that will only add, as you said, to a very young roster. Do you feel like there could be a leadership vacuum that needs to be addressed in the locker room? And what are other urgent roster needs as you see them?
That's a great question, Gunnar. They have some flexibility there, and I think when it's really interesting that we should just be discussing the overall youth and needing to sort of balance that with veteran leadership. I think they're set there with, you know, Sarah Gordon being a captain, one of the most respected players in the entire league. She'll be going into her 10th year in the league next year, and just the perfect sort of captain and identity that this team needs. But I think they also address the balancing youth with experience factor with some of those midseason acquisitions in Hina Sugita and Neely Martin. I think that was another real sneaky good acquisition, someone who is sort of in the sweet spot of her career, the prime of her career. She'll be 27 on opening day next year, in her 6th year in the league. So that's, you know, right in the sort of sweet spot prime of her career. And, you know, they'll also hopefully be getting Claire Emsley back at some point next season, which is, you know, another example of the sort of roster turnover. Of course, it was for the most joyous of reasons because she was on maternity leave. But, you know, Claire Emsley is someone with 13 career NWSL goals for this team. So they have, right now, they have that mix of youth and experience. And I think they also still do have a little flexibility to add more during the off season because we kind of saw, I'll go back to what San Diego did. San Diego players like, you know, especially Delphine Cascarino, who I believe was a midseason addition in 2024. We saw what she was able to do when she had a full season under her belt with a new team.
Mm-hmm. Now, shifting gears one more time a little bit. Angel City, I want to talk about Angel City attendance toward the end of the season, right? It took a little bit of a dip. If I remember correctly, the club only drew about 11,000 or so on a Monday night game against the mighty KC Current. But I wonder if the key word here is Monday. It seems like there were quite a few games on, number one, on weekdays, and not a lot of consistency for maybe broadcast reasons and that type of thing. What do you make of all that? And does Angel City have an attendance problem in your opinion?
Gunnar, I think you brought up exactly the way that I see it, especially as it related to that Kansas City game. I think the biggest factor in that particular game, and in general, I think that, you know, the biggest factor was those weeknight home games. I think, you know, traditionally they just have not, for, you know, a variety of reasons, traffic, work, those have not been as successful from an attendance standpoint as your Saturday and Sunday games. So, you know, you basically have your Saturday 7 p.m. kickoffs, you have Sunday kickoffs at 2 p.m. or 5 p.m., you know, you have those sometimes on Saturdays too. But I think just in general, for at least from an Angel City standpoint, they've had better attendance with their weekend games than their weekday games. And I think, you know, that's sort of a challenge from a balance standpoint, because you can argue that some of the marquee media packages are the Friday night game on Amazon Prime, or the Monday or Thursday national TV primetime games on CBS Sports Network. So you get that exposure in terms of your media rights, but that might be a liability from a home attendance standpoint. So I find that a fascinating issue. And I'm almost, you know, curious. And look, scheduling is a huge balancing act that I wouldn't want any part of. But, you know, maybe in the future, Angel City can get some of those weeknight primetime windows, maybe road games instead of home games. And it just seems to me that in LA, for whatever reason, again, work or traffic, the best attended games have been, weekend games. Because I'll also point this out. I don't know necessarily how it is in other markets, but what I've noticed about Angel City fans is they don't just show up and go in the stadium and leave. They get there early, they tailgate, they have a good time at the festival outside the stadium. A lot of Angel City fans get there like 2 and even 3 hours before the game for all the pregame festivities outside the stadium. So inherently, that's more natural to do on a weekend game when you don't have work to worry about. I even remember, this is a funny quick story, Angel City's first year, I actually went to one of their Challenge Cup games at Cal State Fullerton at Titan Stadium.
Yep.
And it was against Portland. And I showed up and the parking lot was jammed 3 hours before the game. And I'm like, oh man, all this traffic in the parking lot. I didn't know that the Cal State Fullerton baseball team would be playing a game. And I look over at the baseball stadium and it's empty. All those cars were there because it was Angel City fans tailgating. So I think that gives you kind of an indication of the fact that, hey, these fans, they're not just fans who come 10 minutes before the game and then leave. They like to get there early, and weekends, I think, are obviously easier to do that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely some of the best fans in the league, no question. I don't have any more questions for you except for one really quick one. I wonder if I can get you to go out on a limb and make without knowing who are they acquiring this offseason, what exactly is going to happen. Where does Angel City finish next season if you had to? If you had to pick?
I am so biased. So yeah, there's no way I can answer this objectively. So I'm going to say that Angel City next year, and again, I preface this by saying I'm totally biased. This is my head and my heart, but my heart is included. It's usually just my head, but I will say that Angel City will host its first ever home playoff game next year.
All right, folks, you heard it here first from a man who knows better than most anyone else in Greater LA, a legend of Greater LA soccer, Greater LA sports. Thank you so much for the insight and for the time, Isaac. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good to see you again. Getter, take care.
Great to see you. Thank you so much, my friend.
You bet.
And there you heard it. I mean, he had a lot to say about the 2025 season. Isaac, a fantastic interview. And again, you can hear him on the call on iHeartRadio for Angel City Football Club. With that, we end our Angel City segment, actually, as Isaac talked quite a bit, and we get into Orange County Soccer Club. And unfortunately, like we said at the top, Timmy, Cinderella's carriage turned into a pumpkin in New Mexico at Isotope Field. And I know you got some things to say about Isotope Field in just a minute, but a 2-1 loss at New Mexico United. That ends the season in the USL the USL Championship Conference semifinal. Easy for me to say. The 2-1 loss. First, Tim, your thoughts on the 2-1 loss. I only ask you because it was 1-1 heading into stoppage, what was supposed to be 3 minutes of stoppage. Somehow, Tim, the clock struck 4 minutes. They were still playing, and of course, that is when that carriage turned into a pumpkin.
Yeah, as you're watching that game, there was, I don't know, a weird little yellow card in the second minute of extra time. So could that have been it? Could that have been the deal? But if you're going to do that as the referee, if the ball is at the midway point of the field, they're right at the center circle, a yellow card or a goal is not designed to add any additional time to the match. It's a normal run of play, and they score. 15 seconds after that 93rd, after that third minute of extra time expires. Should it have been? You know what? I'm going to go OC Homer on this one and say, yeah, they should have blown the whistle. You know, I believe in the referee a lot, being a former one. But the reality is you got to play until the guy blows the whistle, right? It's just like every other sport that is played on the face of the planet. You got to play to the whistle.
Yeah, New Mexico scoring just after halftime. Orange County leveling through Malik Pinto, of all players, by the way, at about the 70-minute mark. And then, you know, here's the thing. OCSC called it a mysterious extra minute of play in their game recap on their website. The ref signaled for 3 minutes, but in that fourth minute, you did mention, though, when you and I were talking pregame, it was an absolute banger there in the fourth minute. So if you're going to get one, you might as well earn it. Let me ask you, though, two things as we look at the end of Orange County's season. First, having to do it in this match with no Chris Hagart. Chris Hagart getting the red card at the end of their win over Sacramento Republic. And your thoughts on no Chris Hagart being out there and how that affected the match.
Yeah, we talked about this at length last week, and you had to see Usman Sila take over this match, and he did from the get-go. That game is not tied at halftime without Sila masterminding the entire Orange County midfield. And throughout the entire second half, he did the same thing. And he got the primary assist he got the only assist on the goal from Pinto, as it was on a set piece off the corner. And Pinto just bangs it in right, a half volley right off of the corner. I think Silla did an incredible job of picking up where Hagart left off last week. Watching that game, watching the entire game, I don't think there was a drop off, because I know you could just feel that Silla knew that he had to step up even more so than he normally is, playing at his highest level. And I think he did. And I think that's what really brought them to still be tied going into stoppage time, Scarf.
Yeah, we saw an incredible end to the season for Usmane Silla as well. Got his first couple of goals in the last couple matches of the regular season, and really emerged when Orange County needed another player to emerge. Ethan Zubak down the stretch, maybe not so much. Something to talk about, something to think about maybe for another day. But one thing I want to touch on real quick too, we mentioned that amazing field trip that the U.S. Youth National 17-year-olds are going to over in Dubai. Well, Tyson Espy of Orange County Soccer Club is on that airplane headed to Dubai, the U.S. Youth National Team under 17 camp. We saw Pedro Guimaraes, who also starred for the under 17s earlier in this last camp as well. So again, Orange County continuing to prove that pathway. We do want to mention again that there is no best 11 on this one, as Orange County was the only soccer club in action. But please don't forget, again, subscribe to our podcast on all your different podcast platforms. Head on over to the YouTube channel and subscribe to Soccer in 60 on YouTube. That's my good buddy, Tim. I'm your friendly neighborhood Scarf. And this has been yet another action-packed, blazing fast episode of Soccer in 60, brought to you by SAC Health System. We will see you next week.